Ruby is currently working at Astralytical, a space consulting firm, and before Astralytical she was employed as a Mars geochemist at the NASA Johnson Space Center, and her work there contributed to active missions on Mars, the Moon, and also here on Earth. Ruby led a research expedition to Iceland last year, and she is a doctoral candidate in geology at the University of Houston in the United States. You can find her on LinkedIn and as Ruby Patterson, and also on Instagram as Ruby the Space Geologist. Welcome back on the SpaceInfo podcast. Here we talk about space and everything related to it. If you are passionate about space, astronomy, technology and everything about it, you can join all our social platforms at the SpaceInfo Club or our website at www.spaceinfo.club, where tons of content and a community of experts are there waiting for you. This is the SpaceInfo Club. Indeed, maybe you have seen some photographs on our account on Instagram, because today we talk about a very special event occurred last Monday, and for sure you have heard about this. It was the solar eclipse, the Great American Solar Eclipse, and we have a privileged spectator because Ruby was there assisting to the event live. So how was that, Ruby?
Thank you so much for having me back, Sebastiano. I always love coming on the show. Yes, I was present in the path of totality for the Great American Solar Eclipse. I went to this ranch in Texas and I invited a bunch of other early career space professionals, and we had a professional development weekend, but then we also had a big eclipse viewing party. And the hype that was leading up to the event made it so exciting and so real. I think everybody in America was talking about the eclipse. My journey to even get to the path of totality was really crazy because the airports were so crowded and so full. My flight was completely full. Everyone on the plane was there with their friends. They were wearing shirts with eclipses that they had made. I mean, people were traveling en masse to get to the path of totality. So we were keeping our eye on the weather forecast because in South Texas, sometimes it gets a little cloudy, and we got very, very lucky where we were on our ranch. We were about 30 miles west of where the big NASA party was happening in Kerrville, Texas. And so the further west you get, it gets more and more dry out that direction. And so we had lots of breaks in the clouds, but unfortunately the people in Kerrville had tons of clouds covering the sun and the corona, so they actually did not get to see the corona at all. We had a huge break in the cloud right during totality. And if any of you have ever been in an eclipse or even a partial eclipse, you can feel the air get cooler as the moon transits across the sun. And it's a very cool feeling, and the color of the air changes. It looks like kind of a dusky nighttime is starting to fall, and then all of a sudden you go completely dark. And that was the case when we were experiencing totality. Since we were directly in the middle of the path, we had about 4.5 minutes of complete and utter darkness. I wish that I took a time-lapse video of it because it was so dark. I was genuinely surprised how dark it got. Like, the crickets started singing. We heard coyotes howling and yipping in the distance. The air temperature dropped about 10 to 15 degrees. The wind picked up. Like, it was a full shift from day to night. And it became very clear why, before people had a good grasp of what was happening, in an astronomy sense, in a celestial, alignment sense, that they thought this was a message from God, like that, it had a very deep cultural significance, because it was a very, very stark change. So in the moments preceding the eclipse, the girls and I were really, really excited. Like, we had music bumping. We were listening to all different musical artists. We set up a little mini hippie music festival basically on this ranch. We had a huge air mattress and we were all laying out on the air mattress with our eclipse glasses on. Then we had yoga mats out there. We had tents. We had mimosas. Like, it was a party. We were having so much fun. And then once the totality was approaching, we could not lay down any longer. We were just too excited. So everyone got up and we were like, oh my God, it's really happening. People were like screaming and jumping around and everyone was so excited. And then in the midst of totality, you just have to stop and look up and in wonder. Like, it was one of the most incredible things I've ever witnessed. And I understand fully why people travel across the world to see these events, because it was truly spectacular. Like, the feeling of being so tiny, first of all, like, you're in alignment with the sun and the moon and the earth, and it just was a very cool feeling to be connected to other planetary bodies in the solar system. But then, like I was mentioning, the change in the light quality and the air quality and all of that is also a very cool phenomenon to experience for such a long time, like the full 4.5 minutes. So our group, we were playing like tons of dance music up until totality. We were playing like Rihanna, We Found Love in a Hopeless Place. We were like, having a great time. And then we decided as soon as totality hit, we wanted to turn the music off so that we could hear the animals and the bugs and whatever. So for half of the totality, we had complete silence. And that was a very beautiful moment. One of our group members was getting pretty emotional, actually, because she had never really experienced anything like this before, and it was really moving to her. And then about halfway through the totality, we started playing a song called Cosmic Love by Florence and the Machine, and that was probably the best song choice ever for what was going on, because there's kind of this slow build, and it's kind of like a space-themed song anyway, and then all of a sudden the crescendo hits, and everyone's like, yeah, this is it, we're like bopping around, having a great time. So even after totality was over, you just can't help but feel so full of excitement and gratitude and love and like connectedness. It was really a special experience. And then the whole thing, I mean, from the very beginning of the first like bit of transit of the moon over the sun to the very last moment where the moon is completely exiting the sun's the corona, or the body of the sun in the sky, lasted probably less than 2 hours. It was a relatively quick event. And as soon as it was over, we were like, when's the next one? Where can we travel to watch the next one? We kind of formed like an eclipse prosperity cult or something amongst the 6 or 7 of us. So for those of you who are listening and wondering when you can catch the next total solar eclipse, it is going to be in 2026. The path of totality goes over Reykjavik, Iceland, and parts of Spain. And I, as a person who did a lot of field work in Iceland just last year, you would have to be very, very lucky to catch a glimpse of totality in Reykjavik, I would think. It's a very cloudy place, so I do not recommend traveling to Iceland because that would be a very risky move. I would probably recommend going to Spain instead. But so we've got the path of totality in 2026, and then in, I think, 2028, they are having a total solar eclipse in Australia. So there's a couple of options. I think 2027, there's going to be one over Egypt. So we have got a world tour building right now. The SpaceInfo Club Eclipse World Tour is now in the works, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think that summing up the fact that you set up a sort of DJ set, putting the music, involving the people on that side, with that, I would say choreography, something like that. You put the music and then the sun put the chorus and all the other things. It was a sort of universal, choreography. I think that is amazing. I could just see on the NASA YouTube channel the live event, and it was sort of magical. I could only see the images, actually the video, so the only visual experience was on my side. I'm in Europe, so that was the only possibility on my side, but I just can simply and only imagine the whole environment, because as you correctly said, Ruby, wait a minute, maybe it's the first time you're listening to the SpaceInfo podcast. So I have to let you know that SpaceInfo.club is a platform and a community. We are today counting more than 130,000 followers and members across all the different platforms. So I strongly invite you to visit our website at www.spaceinfo.club to discover all the content we publish, and also our Instagram account and LinkedIn profile. If you're a company or a professional who would like to be featured on our platform, don't hesitate to contact us, so you'll be featured on our magazine, articles, and also can participate in the SpaceInfo podcast. Now, back to the episode. the sun and the light is not the only phenomenon involved in the whole thing. Actually, because of the sun radiation is the most contributing part in the heat, in the heat on the Earth's surface. When you just cut it off, the whole temperature changes, and consequently the whole let's say local atmosphere changes. So wind, temperature, humidity, all these factors just simply change, and they do it very rapidly. So the whole animals and plants and everything around you, I just can only imagine that rapid change, and so that must have been amazing. I'm seeing that for people in the US now you'll need something like 20 years, because the next total solar eclipse, I don't know the partial ones, the next total one will be on around August the 23rd, 2044. So yeah, if you want to get back and participate, let's say in the next, as you say, the SpaceInfo Club eclipse event, probably you'll need to get in Europe or North Africa, as you said. And how was the whole experience? So how did you see the people around you? Okay, so I think that you were much involved, you and your friends, but the other people, how did they perceive it?
So we were on a private ranch, and so I was only around my friends for the eclipse, and we felt very connected. We were very much on the same page, like I was talking about a few minutes ago. But I found out from other friends who had traveled to the Path of Totality who were not on the ranch. They were a little bit closer to this town called Kerrville. They were a little bit disappointed because there was a very thick cloud cover over the sky, and many people that had traveled from California, like I had, or from all over the country, perhaps all over the world, were actually not able to observe totality in the Texas Hill Country portion of the path. People in Dallas, Texas, for example, had a beautiful clear view of totality for 4.5 minutes. So my advice for anyone who would travel to the Path of Totality and perhaps take vacation days and spend a lot of money on this travel getting their family there, make sure that you check weather forecasts, make sure that you are prepared to drive maybe the day before and try to get to a place that has less cloud cover and less humidity. My friends and I got very, very lucky. We had been checking the weather and we were concerned. We had conversations about possibly hopping in the car and driving 5 or 6 hours to try to catch it in totality without cloud cover. And we said, we're at a perfect place where the clouds burn off throughout the day, and I think we're gonna get lucky. And we were joking that, we were an all-women group, and the moon is a feminine celestial object, and she was looking out for us. We were like, thanks, girl. So that was fun. And one thing I forgot to mention, actually, is when the totality was occurring, you could actually view it without eclipse glasses. You had to be very careful, like when you were timing it, but we also had very light cloud, like wispy clouds kind of sweeping over, so our eyes were mostly protected during totality. So we were a lot of us were just viewing it without our glasses on. And even without glasses, and even without zooming in on our phones and our cameras, when we were looking at the corona, we saw these bright red spots all around the halo of the corona. And we looked it up later, and it turns out we were able to witness solar flares. Like, these were really intense solar events, and I've never in my life witnessed that with my bare eyes, with my naked eyes. It was incredible, and yet another cool aspect to this experience. So you asked me, how was it? How was the whole thing? And I say it was completely remarkable, extraordinary, life-changing, 10 out of 10.
Yeah, just to give an idea of how much special it was, probably if you're listening this podcast, you're probably very passionate about astronomy and let's say galaxy and star photos from, let's say, something like space telescope, and you're wondering how photo of stars are taken with the technique of which is called the coronagraph. When you put a circular sector, a complete circle in front of your your camera, because you need to cancel out all that light coming from the center of the star. Well, actually, this was, let's say, a natural coronagraph, because you had the moon just in the right place for something like 4.5 minutes, and canceling out, indeed it is an eclipse, all the light of the sun, so you can appreciate, as you said, the corona and the solar phase. I think that must have been magical, and yeah, that's a completely natural event, and just something so special. And to give a further idea about the places and how why it was called the Great American Eclipse, actually you could appreciate the eclipse straight from San Antonio, Austin, Dallas, through Little Rock up to Indianapolis. You could be able to appreciate the totality. And then on if you were in Cleveland and also in Buffalo, you could appreciate not exactly the totality, but a great partial eclipse at least. So yeah, it was amazing. I think that we'll have again total solar eclipses, but probably the path on the Earth won't be so extended that so much people could be able to watch at it. So yeah, that's really a magical event. Probably it deserves all the hype that was around it, and I think it will stay in the memory and in the heart of people for much time.
I agree. The amount of people that were traveling with their children or their parents, it was very special, and I could tell even, in the airport that people had an incredible experience, and even folks that were in a place with thick cloud cover mentioned that they still felt really connected, and they still felt really grateful for experiencing the darkness. And it is a huge shift, even from 99% to 100%. It makes a significant difference in how bright and how warm or cool the air is around you. So getting to totality was very important.
Yeah, indeed. Now I'm looking at the graph of the next, let's say, American eclipse, but the path will be, I would say, completely different. Indeed, that's something like more, I would say, a Canadian eclipse, because it will start from Montana and North Dakota with a little path for the totality, but then we go through the Northwest Territory, passing through Alberta and the British Columbia state, and then to Greenland. So it will be kind of a different. So yeah, it is even more special. That this eclipse was even more special. So now I would drive the conversation if you don't have anything to add more. I don't know, because I'm really excited to have someone that was living there and seeing the event live. So I don't know if you want to add anything.
No, I'm just grateful for the experience, and I will be going to the next solar eclipse. I will be going to Spain for it, absolutely. I also wanted to add that if you plan on going to a solar eclipse, you need to book your accommodations years in advance. I think a lot of people overlook this fact and they do not anticipate it being busy. There was a map of the Airbnb bookings in America, and it was a complete red stripe all down the path of totality. You could not find a hotel room, a motel room, an Airbnb, nothing, because everyone had booked them so far in advance. Some people that I know booked their hotel accommodations 3 years ago, literally 3 years ago, for like a very, very average hotel room. So if you plan on going to Iceland or Spain for 2026 or Egypt for 2027, it may seem like it's too early to book, but I promise you it's not. It's time to get on that, especially if you plan on traveling with a large group of people and you all want to stay together. So that is my advice. And I also wanted to say that I really appreciated all of the memes that came out of this eclipse. There were some really funny ones. I think one of them that I appreciated a lot was someone had put a picture of the corona as, the first picture, and then the second picture was the moon was gone, and it was a picture of a tipping screen, like after you buy food in America, where tipping culture is very, very out of control right now. And so that one cracked me up as an American who has to tip on literally every service ever. Like the other day I went to a concert and we parked in a parking lot, and the parking attendant asked us for a tip on a little iPad. So this meme really hit home for me. And then another one that I really liked was someone had taken a graham cracker, like a cracker with a bunch of like little holes in it, and they were looking at the shadows of the eclipse through a graham cracker, which I thought was really cute.
Yeah, and I would say that that's an amazing time to be alive and to have eclipses nowadays. Indeed, actually, I would just recall this thing in a few seconds, but I would add that if you want to share your photos and tag the Space Info Club page on Instagram, just do it, because a lot of people will see it. Tag the Space Info Club, and also if you want, also tag Ruby the Space Geologist. Visit her account, because I've seen a lot of photos and a lot of stories, so it will be like being there at the event. So also thank you, Ruby, for sharing them. And yeah, as said, nowadays we have let's say this meme culture, but eclipses actually are in the history of humanity since centuries, I would say. So well, different cultures had different interpretation and differently saw this fact of the eclipses, and as you can imagine, this culture gave a different interpretation of what was happening. Indeed, they described the solar eclipse as for example, as a battle between good and evil, for example, with the fate of the people on Earth at stake, actually. Indeed, in the book Totality by Fred Espenach and Mark Littman, well, they describe a pattern in mythology where a creator tries to eat the sun. Maybe I don't know if it is the same thing in America, but here in Europe we had the Pollon cartoon, which was a cartoon which was on the TV something like 20-30 years ago, where the ancient Greece gods were the main theme of the cartoon, and you could see how the sun was transported on this carriage by the gods and put in place in the sky. And I think that people had the very same interpretation of the fact that time. And I think that this fact is quite justified, because as said, a lot of things changed during the event: temperature, the light, the humidity, and also the behavior of animals. So indeed, also in tradition, an eclipse was a sign of something that was terrible and was going to happen very soon. So it required the action towards evil to fight it. Also, in many tradition, making noise, shouting, and also creating a scene was thought to be the right way to fight what was happening. And also, well, the superstition that came out during the centuries, because at the beginning people just thought that it was something connected to the religious side, but also today NASA reports that several myths still exist today around bad fortune. So they tell that they talk about an upcoming bad health or bad fortune, and everyone is trying to fight it. Also, it is seen as a warning sign for pregnant women, and they are invited not to look up. This just give you an idea of how much it is eradicated into people's mind. So I think that the whole thing is very strong, and it also has a great impact on people beliefs. Indeed, also according to NASA, the belief that an eclipse brings bad omens remains very pervasive, and also whenever something bad happens around an eclipse, it contributes to the confirmation bias, I would say. Indeed, if something good happens, you just not let's say give a chance to it. But if it is something bad, people say, okay, that's due to the eclipse. Also, according to Austin, some of the worry around the eclipses are rooted into real-life events. For example, in history, we could witness that King Charles I and his son died around a solar eclipse. So that was a sign that it was a bad omen. Indeed, also later in the Prophet Muhammad's son also died around an eclipse, and finally also King Henry I of England died again around an eclipse. So bad signs around history are still here, and some people believe that the eclipse are something bad happening, and the myths and the superstition are really strong. Try to think about the extreme power that let's say early astronomers could have towards I would say common people when they were able to actually predict the solar eclipses. Indeed, I'm thinking about Babylonians or ancient Egyptians, for example, and people around 2,000, 4,000 years ago, the first people actually were able to predict the solar eclipse through the first, let's say, astronomical capabilities. So a strong power, a strong, I would say, belief of common people were attributed to them. So they were very, very powerful. Nowadays, everyone could just check on the internet when the next solar eclipse would be. And I would use this topic to introduce the last one topic of today, and just give you, let's say, an idea on something to think about up to the next episode. It's something that a lot of people are talking about around the internet, around the world nowadays, and that's the so-called three-body problem. Well, the three-body problem is known since something like 500 years or something like that, when people started to actually reckon that, for example, the Earth is turning around the Sun, and different systems actually exist in the universe. And when people also recognized that gravity is a very strong force in the universe, because if you just get two bodies in space, they are attracted just because they have mass. That's the only required condition for two bodies to attract themselves. But what happens if you just put a third body? Think about the Sun, the Earth, and the Moon. Their reciprocal motion can be actually complex, specifically if you are living on Earth. That must be very complex to predict if you don't have a strong astronomical knowledge. If you still add bodies and bodies in the whole system, for example the solar system, and then you recognize that the solar system is not the only system in the universe. We have billions of stars in the whole universe, and everything is reciprocally attracted from each other. So they are all connected through the gravitational forces. This is actually an open problem in math, because you don't have an analytical solution to it. You can only approximate the thing, and if you just come down to three bodies, for example Sun and the Earth, and for example think about a spacecraft that's orbiting the Earth or orbiting the Sun, well, it will be attracted from both the Sun and the Earth thanks to their gravity. You can just find out that there are 5 points in this system, which are called Lagrangian point, and one of them is Lagrangian point number 2, where a lot of space telescope and the Webb space telescope itself is placed there. That's very special because it's a point where you just put one thing, and it's very easy, that's quite easy to keep it in that place without requiring too much propulsion and fuel, because that's an unstable point, but you really need very, very little force to keep it there, and that's something like, I would say, magical. That's a sort of magic where if you think how much fuel, how much energy is needed to escape Earth's orbit, Earth's gravity, then you just get to that point, and that's so easy to keep something like a space telescope to keep it there. And now maybe almost Dr. Ruby Patterson can tell us something around I would say orbital mechanics, and if also in America people are getting I would say mad talking about the three-body problem. I think that a series, I don't know on which platform we get out, but here in Europe a lot of people are talking about this problem, which is actually known since centuries.
That's so cool. So as a geologist, you are really pushing the limits of my technical knowledge on this topic. My knowledge basically extends as far as what you've just mentioned. I know that these Lagrangian points are really significant for placements of telescopes and things like that. Exactly. So thank goodness that this phenomenon exists, because otherwise we would have a significantly more challenging time taking deep space images and learning about exoplanets and, huge solar system and, beyond, solar system and bigger level phenomenon. So I'm grateful that it exists, and I'm also grateful that I do not have to study the very complex mechanics behind it. I'll stick to my rocks, I'll stick to my exploration science.
So that's really interesting. Also, if you like this episode, now I just remember that if you want to have further information about space, please consider subscribing to the SpaceInfo Club newsletter and also join the members club. But most importantly, also visit the Astrolytical website, where you can find a newsletter there. And maybe Ruby, if you want to spell it out so people can just land on that website.
Sure. Okay. Astrolytical is spelled ASTRALYTICAL. Astrolytical.
Yeah, astrolytical.com. That's the website for you. Now that we have given you a little information about the next topic of the next episode, you can think about this problem and this amazing orbital mechanics thing. I just give you a goodbye, and also thank you, Ruby, for being here, joining us in this episode. Hope to have you back soon.
Yes, I would love to come back. Thanks for having me. It's always fun to be on the SpaceInfo podcast.
Thank you, and goodbye.
Bye.